Hey everyone, welcome to the Beyond Extent podcast, a podcast dedicated to a chat between two environment artists discussing everything about the industry we work in. I'm Timothy and I'm joined by William, who is a friend and fellow colleague of mine. In this episode, we talk a little bit about the Xbox games announcements, the differences between playing games as a developer and our little pet peeves, and lastly, we also answered a Patreon question about giving feedback. Really had fun on this one, and I hope you all feel the same way. Let's dive in. Hey everyone, welcome to this weekly episode of the podcast. It's episode 13. And
Yay!
as always, we have Will with us too. Hey Will.
Hey! Hello! Hello, everybody.
How you doing, buddy?
Same as always. Pretty good, but pretty tired.
Yeah, you were telling me about a pretty horrific death in Tarkov before we started the podcast. And it's actually a good segue for a thing that we want to talk about this week.
And funny how that works out.
Yeah. But maybe actually, let's talk about the Xbox game showcase thingy.
Let's do that beforehand.
So you haven't seen it yet, right?
I have not.
Yeah.
But I was counting on you telling me all about it.
Yeah, I was pretty interested in it, but I don't really get super hyped by these things anymore. It's just really nice to see what other developers in other studios are working on.
Yeah.
And I have to admit, I was really interested by Halo Infinite and what they were gonna do with it. But then when the actual showcase came up and they showed like 8 minutes of gameplay too, I was kind of underwhelmed. Like I was more expecting more from it. Because they kind of showed off like a crash landing, and then they want to open up the world, so it's gonna be a little bit more open world. I don't expect it to be like a full open world, but hey, who knows? So they were driving around the Warthog for a little bit, and then just killing some enemies. But just there was something about the environments that were on display. They looked really, really blocky, especially the textures of stuff in the background, because they had like these hexagonal shaped vista
rocks.
Yeah, rock formations.
Right.
And they looked really weird, man. Like they looked like they just had a base color on it, and that was it. Okay. Like it looked like a block out almost.
Huh.
Yeah, and I
wonder if it was.
I was so turned off by that. I was like, oh, like they go up this elevator at one point, and then they have like the Halo music ramp up, and you have this beautiful terrain with like the sun coming up and all that stuff, and then you see these horrible vista chunks just sticking out as a sore thumb in the background. It's just like, oh, yeah. So on a graphic standpoint, I wasn't really too impressed. But then, there was some other cool stuff. I'm so bad at remembering it though. Like you had the sneak announcement of Fable in the end.
Nice.
Which is pretty cool. Like that's
a lot of people are excited about that.
Yeah. That's also why I bought the original Xbox too. So to just buy Fable, just play Fable, and I love those games. So I'm curious what they're gonna do with that. But then, yeah, it also made me think about the closing of Lionhead Studios and how that whole thing went down. Because the game, from looking at the screenshots and what they had on display, it was already like 90% done. I don't know if you can remember that stuff.
Let me look it up. I think I definitely read something about it.
Yeah, because it was basically, I don't know how it all went down anymore, but yeah, some people that I know from, they were working on that Fable game, and they were pretty excited about it, and then the studio just went under, and they never released it. And I guess then the IP got sold, or like, I think it was sold. Like they're not gonna hand an IP out to Playgrounds.
All right.
And now they're developing that game. But
All
it's
right, we'll see what comes of it, I guess.
yeah. I'm curious. Curious.
Yeah,
There was
it's
some other cool stuff like I forgot the name of the game. I think it was Everwild from Rare Studios, and it looked really nice and cute. Like it just had a really friendly, welcoming like atmosphere around it. So yeah, I'd be interested in checking that one out.
oh yeah, I see it. It looks kind of Breath of the Wildish a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah, it looks pretty interesting. I would say that as a game developer, I don't know. There's something about like just the repetition of the AAA games that don't really tend to innovate as much.
Yeah,
So it makes all those indie games or like smaller games way more interesting. And
yeah.
yeah, it's just there's just
I
something more
was
attractive to them.
yeah. I had last weekend. I had like a I was lying in my bed, fucking 4 a.m. in the morning, and I was hit by an idea for a game, and I did like a little brainstorming on it, and it was like there was a lot of stuff that I noticed that I just never heard before being done in a game,
Hmm.
and then that's when I realized that yeah, even though there's so many games out there, because especially the big companies, they need to play it safe, right? They want to do the stuff that they know that people are gonna play.
Yeah, they want to reach the biggest amount of people as possible.
Exactly. So that there's still so much like untapped potential, and that when I realized that, I was like, oh man, this is crazy how much like you can still come up with new stuff.
Hmm.
All right, which was really interesting, and I even started on a character because I was gonna try that out. I bought Marvelous Designer recently,
Oh
and then
damn. Okay.
yeah,
So you're branching out.
because I sold my Counter Strike skins, some of them, and then because Marvelous Designer is on Steam, and I was like, okay, might as well buy this because you can't really convert the Steam money otherwise.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, that's a good
Um,
investment though.
yeah, yeah, you don't get the updates like you would if you paid. I think it's like 150 euros more.
Hmm.
But then I think Marvelous Designer fucking what is it 9? It's gonna be all right. It's pretty. It's pretty far along the curve because what I used before was like Marvelous Designer 2
Oh, okay. Yeah,
full
yeah.
time because that's what we had at university.
Yeah, that's a giant leap. I
Yeah.
never use it myself.
Oh really?
Hmm.
Never? Not even for like a little tarp
No,
over something?
not ever.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, it's a really cool software. It's at first I was like, wow, this performance is horrible. This is this is so slow. But then I realized that when exporting my base mesh from ZBrush, it must have somehow blown up the scale, so everything was huge. And the way Marvelous Designer does the like density calculation is by scale. You
Oh,
can put
yeah,
in
yeah,
particle distance, and that's how far the vertices are away from each other.
yeah. It was just
And
like, oh, let me slap a billion particles on this thing.
exactly, because it was like, oh, this guy is like 7 meters tall, so we're gonna make it like 4 million tries. This fucking jagged thing. But then I figured that out, and it ran pretty smoothly, and it's so much nicer than any other class simulation that I've seen. And yeah, I did a little guy with some pants with some pockets on him and stuff. It was pretty fun. It
Oh,
was
nice.
I
So you're
yeah like
you're you're actually making the first steps into making a small game then.
I mean yeah, very very slow. It's just sometimes you have this little idea in your head. You're like maybe I'll start with something. Maybe if I really want to, at some point I could get like uh, a little prototype, and then But I mean, it's probably like 90% of what you do, right? It's just gonna end up in a folder somewhere on a hard drive.
Yeah.
But it's cool to do that sometimes. I just like I grabbed a beer. I went down one block, sat next to the river, had a little brainstorming thing. That was really nice.
Oh, that's cool, man.
Yeah.
So was that beer also 4 in the morning, or?
No, that was the next day. That was 4 in the afternoon, probably.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool, man. So
Yeah, that was really
you're
nice.
slowly but surely planning out the design of the game, or like the fundamental structure, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You're thinking about some features, thinking about like the general approach that I want to have, and yeah, it's gonna be revolutionary, guys. It's gonna be the next big thing.
Oh, is it gonna be the next big AAA MMORPG then?
Oh yeah, yeah, of course, of course, because that's what I'm all about. I'm all about those RPGs,
Oh.
those MMOs. Man, I don't like MMOs. It's really not my type of game.
hmm But that's a
It's,
typical thing that you hear, right? Like, oh, I'm gonna start
yeah, yeah.
developing my own game, and it's gonna be an MMO with like an
The
ever-changing
biggest
world,
thing.
and it's like, oh yeah, good luck with that.
So you want to make Star Citizen on your own?
Yeah.
Okay, guy. Okay, guy. Go ahead.
Oh man, but I do feel that when you have these moments of inspiration like you had, sometimes you just have to go for it, man.
Yes,
Just do it.
yes. You have to take them as they come. You know, you can't. I was like, even though, like I said, there's really nothing ever gonna come out of it. But if you have like a cool idea, just take the time, write it down. You know, maybe somewhere down the line.
hmm Yeah, you never know when you're gonna pick it back up, and it might, like that's also the good thing. Like even if you write it down now, you build like a base structure, and then you have I don't know, a hiatus for like 2 years, and then you find those things again, and it still sticks.
Yeah,
Then you know that you have something good on your hands.
exactly. Yeah, and then you maybe actually came up with something good.
Oh yeah, well that's awesome, man.
So
So
yeah,
yeah, this is somewhat a good segue to what we were talking about before with the crates in Tarkov and how you would design your game to be really easy to understand for the players as well. So what we
yeah.
were essentially
So
talking about. Oh yeah, go ahead, Will.
yeah, no, no. I was just gonna say exactly like as we were talking before the podcast about this. So what we were essentially talking about is how you play games differently,
Mm-hmm.
or how you perceive games differently as a game developer. Like as an artist, obviously is a thing. Like you look at stuff more closely and you're like, oh, how did they do this? Is this a decal or is this vertex paint or what is this? You know,
Yeah.
and but then also from a game design perspective, because like I said, I've been playing Escape from Tarkov right now, and I'm having a lot of fun. But there's some fundamental things that really bug me about the game, especially because I heard at work 1,000 times over that you're not supposed to do that kind of stuff, and then if you see it in another game, it's almost like it's when you're at school and you're like the guy who does who studies really hard, and then there's this other guy who just comes in and he does the test and he somehow he gets by with it anyway. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's like that because you're like you're not supposed to do that, but they're having success. Nobody cares, you know, but it still makes you mad because you know it's wrong.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and
And
it can be in our case, for example, it can be simple stuff like if you
yes,
look at Far Cry 5, for example, if you just take that as an example, if you see all the vehicles in the game and you know that they're drivable, then
yeah,
if at some point you encounter a vehicle that is still standing there but you can't access it in some way or form and it's not visibly locked, then you're gonna create this extra confusion for the player because he or she expects for that vehicle to be open and drivable, but
right.
then you can't access it at all, which is just frustrating for the player.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So that's what we talked about earlier in about Tarkov. So in Tarkov, there's fuel as an item that you can pick up, and you can use it for fuel in your little hideout. Um, but there's also fuel cans that just that are like part of the map. They're just standing there as a prop,
Yeah, yeah. There's just static props to the
just
environment.
yeah, and you can't pick them up, and it's that kind of stuff is really aggravating because at some point, obviously, you know the map and you know that there's the jerry can over there and you can't pick it up. But it can be so like if you don't know the map, you would just think that there's fuel everywhere and you can take it. And the same with there's some crates. There's like this green wooden military crate that you can loot, but then there's like stacks of it as well as another prop, as a static prop. And there's like some of them that are covered with tarp, but some of them aren't, and you can't loot them. You can't loot the ones on top. But then sometimes, in specific cases, someone took that prop of the pile of crates and put one of the lootable crates on top of them, so you can loot that one.
Oh god!
But you can't loot the other one, and it's like you have to learn it by heart. You know, it's super unintuitive.
Yeah.
And it's got nothing to do with realism, because if it was realistic, you could go and take the crates and, you know, take them off of the stack of crates and loot each one individually. Of course, I understand why they're not going to do that, because it's crazy. But if there's a crate that's obviously not covered by anything and there's no lock on it, there's no reason for it to not be lootable, then let me loot it.
Yeah.
Or just open it up and show me that it's empty or something. You know, that's that kind of stuff. Or doors there's some doors that you can open. There's some doors that you need a key for, and there's some doors that are just they're at the end of the map, so they're just there and you can't do anything with them. And show me a difference. Make it boarded up. Have it show like no access, and it's like I don't know, you know, there's a guy and you need a key, but it's not an item in the game, so you actually can't open it. Just make it have a reason for why I can open this door, but I can't open that one.
Yeah, especially in a game that is centered around quick, high action backed battles like that, where you can just die in the blink of an eye, basically. If you're stuck jumping on crates because you want to look if the top crate is lootable or whatever, like that can cost you the game, basically.
Yeah, or if you run towards cover to get into that one door and then you can't open it. I mean, yeah, that's the thing. It's like I don't have those problems anymore because I know the maps.
Yeah.
But
that's the thing, right?
Like and that shouldn't be necessary.
Yeah, it's like some sort of handicap that you put on like the new players, because you establish these visual rules and then you break them all the time. So you have like especially beginning players that are not used to the maps or trying to get into the game, and then they get frustrated by being shot because they were trying to loot or like open this door and they ended up in like a dead end or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that can be really frustrating and just cost you players in the end too.
Yeah.
Because like you said, like the more experienced players, they're just gonna memorize all these places or like look up some guides or where to best loot stuff or whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not really from an artist perspective, definitely. It's not really good to not have that consistency.
Yeah, you need that visual consistency.
Yeah.
Especially in a big game.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of weird because I do remember at some point that I was doing this myself as well. But then it got pointed out by someone else that this was not the way to do it. And yeah, it's just it's one of those things that you really have to think about, and it's like one of those really small things that can have like a big impact on like the player base.
Yeah. So what about, we've been talking about the negatives a while, but what is the last game that you played and as a developer you were just like blown away or you were like impressed with what they were able to achieve?
Well, like in terms of this visual consistency that we talked about, or just in general?
In general, like, graphics, gameplay, just something that you thought that because you were a developer, you experienced it differently than someone else might have.
Well, this is going back to a previous point that you made, right? Like there is a difference between playing as a developer and playing as a gamer, because it's been, I gotta be honest, like it's been a long while since I've played a game that I played as a gamer. If you know what I mean. Like there's a lot of moments in games where I just lose myself, like looking at the textures and trying to figure out if this is a decal or something. We actually talked about this in the community last night, and we were just having a chat about Star Citizen and how they do their decals and like the workflow that they use. And there were some people that were jumping into the game and like trying to get like an angled view so they could have a look if it was a decal or not, but it was really hard to see. So yeah, I would
Yeah, I
say that
think in
that
that
is one of
case,
the one of the bigger things that changed. I think that the last game that I played as a gamer was probably the Division 2 that I still play
oh,
like occasionally with some friends because I really like the world, especially in New York. I don't.
that was the
That was the first one.
that was the first one.
Yeah, yeah. But they added like the DLC in the second one where you can go back to New York.
Yes,
So yeah, that was pretty interesting because what they did with those maps is you have 4 quadrants, but they wanted to make those quadrants of the map feel distinct from each other.
yeah.
So I think we
There's like
even
the oil tanker, right?
yeah, we even had what was her name again? I forgot. Like there was
A world
the
designer.
world content director, I think. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
something.
For that DLC came and did a talk in the studio before all the COVID stuff happened. And that was really interesting hearing her talk about like those 4 quadrants as well, like the flooded part and like the oil tanker part and like the other sections.
That was yeah, that was really interesting. That was literally like 2 weeks before COVID too. I
Yeah, that's
remember
true. Yeah.
because that's I because I had I got a tattoo on. I came in with the plastic wrap on my arm to that talk,
Oh
and
yeah.
then I had a follow up appointment to fix something, and that appointment actually never happened because COVID. So it was literally a week or two before.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but that was such an interesting talk. And
Yeah,
yeah, I think stuff like that is stuff that really interests me. I really
like
want
world
to
building.
walk around in Star Citizen and explore that world too.
Yeah,
But yeah, I
the
haven't I
thing.
haven't gotten to it yet.
I think I paid for the alpha access like 5 years ago.
Yeah, me too. I bought like a starter pack or something with like one
Yeah,
ship in
yeah,
it.
same, same.
Yeah, what is your game where you were really impressed by the visual quality?
I mean, Red Dead Redemption 2, right? That's
Mm,
I played that a couple months back when COVID started, and whew, it's a nice.
yeah.
It's just and that's it's this thing like where you if you go up close to stuff, it's just all regular props, right? It's got the same limitations that we have
Hmm.
or that anybody has working on a big game, but with like the weather system, with the lighting, the effects, and everything. Like if you just take a step back, and usually you're in third person, so you are literally a step back.
Hmm.
It looks so good.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a game that
And
I still need to play because it
oh
looks
yeah,
absolutely gorgeous.
and I remember playing back in uni. I was playing Uncharted 4,
Hmm.
and that really impressed me with the player leading
Yeah.
because, and you don't even notice it while you're playing if you don't look out for it, but it just the way they do like the lighting really subtle. Sometimes it's less subtle, but usually it is pretty subtle to like nudge you where you need to go.
Hmm.
Like when you enter like an arena, let's say, right, where there's a bunch of enemies are going to be, you can usually already tell where you need to go, even without like a mark or anything. And that's what really impressed me about that game is just like that consistency in like I never felt lost at any point.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and yeah, and that was just really impressive to me. And then of course it looks great as well. So
Hmm. Yeah, I saw some breakdowns of the level design and environment art of the Uncharted series, and I think The Last of Us as well,
yeah.
where they set up their stuff intentionally so that you go down the wrong path, you end up at a dead end, but then if you turn around, you see where you actually need to go.
Oh
And
right.
so it's like they do that stuff intentionally, but
Yeah.
if you're playing it, you don't really realize it and notice it that much.
Yeah.
And
And
then
it's
you have the feeling that if you turn around and you find the right path and you have to get there through a ladder or whatever, then you give like this extra incentive, and it makes the player feel smart because they figured
yeah,
out their way through this environment even though they were wrong in the beginning,
right.
which is actually
Yeah,
pretty interesting.
that's really cool. But it's really funny because if you can read where they want you to go, it can be kind of fun to then do the exact opposite.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually usually how you find the hidden collectibles.
Yeah, exactly.
Or also sometimes you just find stuff that hasn't had as much love and care put into it,
Mm-hmm.
which can be hilarious. I remember I think it was the Modern Warfare campaign where I played that, and it was they were less subtle, I would say, with their player leading because that's not really what the game's about.
Mm-hmm.
But then sometimes if you go into another direction and you look at like this pile of trash on the floor, you just notice, oh, someone wasn't really that careful with the UVs over there, and someone didn't do this correctly because it's just in the background in an area where you're not supposed to go.
Yeah.
But if you do go there, you can like really see the little more rushed parts,
Mm-hmm.
which is, I mean, it's completely fine. You need to do that, right? You need to prioritize in game development, but it's just funny when you can see exactly where like that little cutoff was.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, okay, this area needs to be polished. This one, maybe not so much.
Yeah, it's interesting to look at it from that perspective too. When you're walking around in like a big open world game,
Yeah.
and you have like the quest area where you need to be, and then you have like the surrounding buildings where just people are walking around or whatever, and
Yeah.
just looking around in those buildings and just really looking at the texture details. And then yeah, I would say that if you're really looking for it, you can see where the world falls apart. But this is specifically for us game developers, because if you're playing the game as you normally would, you wouldn't see it because you're focusing on the bigger picture. You're focusing on
Exactly.
like, oh, I just need to get here. Like, oh, this is a nice part of town. You just go through it, and then oh, there's a nice vista over there. I'm gonna go there. You don't spend like, I don't know, crazy amounts of time just looking at this wall and how it was built and whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, that's what I was saying, right? You see it through a different pair of eyes almost because you're focusing on something that they don't want you to focus on, and that's why you're interested, right?
Mm-hmm.
They want you to focus on the house where the mission is in, not the ones around it. But
Yeah. Sometimes I wish I could turn that part of my brain off though, where I could
yes,
just switch it off and just like enjoy the game as a gamer again, and not just catch myself looking at a wall for too long, or like at a ground texture and how it's blending or whatever.
definitely. And
Because
sometimes it can, if you find something wrong, it can also frustrate you a little bit.
yeah.
I remember walking around in Hitman 2, and there was a. I knew that they were doing a lot of stuff with decals,
Mm-hmm.
and I was looking at a wall, and there was like it was like a concrete wall in an embassy or something, and there was like writing that was supposed to be like carved out of the concrete or like molded into the concrete. It was like an inset into the concrete,
Mm-hmm.
and I walked up close to it, and the decal was like 20 centimeters away from the wall. And it had like parallax occlusion on it as well, because they have parallax occlusion on everything.
Yeah.
Even on the bullet holes, I think.
Yeah.
And it just looks so strange because it's like 20 centimeters off of the wall, but it's got parallax occlusion. So you've got like this black hole floating in front of this wall.
This is where we really shoot ourselves in the foot when we're playing games. It's just like it
Yes.
doesn't matter. Like
It
that's
does not
stupid.
matter, yeah. but it feels like such a big thing.
Yeah, it's like, ooh, the artist didn't really pay attention to it. And then
Yeah.
I mean, this kind of sounds like we're the best at our jobs too. But I can guarantee you that at some point people are gonna have the same discussions that we're having now, but just about us.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, that's the thing, right? It's just you. Of course, in a perfect world, you would make it all like that. Like everything would be
Yeah.
ideal the way it should be. But then there's deadlines, there's technical limitations. So yeah,
Or like it reshuffles of locations that you're working on too.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's just like part of the iteration. It's just like, oh, level design comes in and says like, look, we're running into some issues here. We need to move this building, and then
And then they don't move the decal or something.
yeah. Then you forget about this one floating bullet hole decal, and it's just like, oh shit, yeah.
Yeah. That's the thing. That's why the Tarkov thing frustrates me, because it's not that. It's like a deep-seated design flaw. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's more
not
like a
just
structural
little
game
fuck up.
design thing.
Yeah. Cuz it's something that should have been figured out, but yeah, enough about that.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting to talk about all this stuff, and also how most games use color contrast to lead you as well. Like I saw like a thread. I think I was talking to a level designer about this, and he shared a thread where he was talking to an artist from Overwatch, I think, and he shared some screenshots how they guide you visually through spaces, where they really work with colors and contrast. So if you're in a really bright spot, then the connecting corridors are dark, and then you go from those dark corridors into another light space, or you can just invert it. So
Interesting.
So yeah, they would guide you with like that kind of contrast. So like you have this giant space that you're in, everything is lit up, and then the connecting corridors are dark, so that you know that you need to go there.
Huh.
Yeah, there's
that's cool, because then you have the literal light at the end of the tunnel, which is where you need to go.
exactly. And like if you're in a dark spot, you just flip it. You just flip the contrast. But there's so much thought that goes into creating these things, and like just the concept of weenies, or having like vista objects in the distance where you can see. I was watching someone play Ghost of the Tsushima.
Yes.
And there was this really natural rock formation, and they had like a medium-sized lantern next to it, but the shapes of both things contrasted in a way that it was like, that lantern looks a bit out of place. So it would like invite you in, or like pull you in. And then you would find I don't know what they're called. I haven't played the game. I think places.
Yeah, there's like these shrines.
Yeah, places of honor where you can level up or whatever. And then it's like, oh, cool. Yeah, I figured this out on my own, even though it was like built into like the literal environment.
That's the best thing about that player leading stuff, is it makes the player feel like they accomplished something, even though it was all, or not all, but it was mostly on the developer's part. But that's the best, because then you're not only getting the player to where he needs to be, but you're also making him feel good.
Yeah, I feel like we can compare it to visual effects in movies. Like the more invisible it is, the better it works.
Yeah, exactly.
Even though we don't get the credit for that, though. Well, that's something we'll have to deal with.
Yeah. But I remember also when it came over me, I think it was in The Last of Us or some game I played, where I realized at some point that, wait, everything I can climb is yellow.
Yeah.
I think there's like always like a police line, do not cross little tape that hangs where I need to go, or like a little yellow, I don't know, a little yellow barrel is next to where I need to climb.
Yeah, like
there's
some
always
yellow paint or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. There's always that little something. And then I had played like through half of the game. I think it was maybe it was something else, but I think it was. And you go through like half of the game, and then you realize when I'm lost, what am I looking for? For where I need to go. And I guess I just at some point figured out that what I was looking for is yellow.
Yeah.
And that's really cool.
It's the same in The Division, but that's also why I hate being a developer, because you think about that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So that's when I'm playing The Division, and you have this point where you need to get to I don't know, a shade, take cache or whatever. And it's like, oh, it's fairly simple. I just need to find like the yellow stuff in the environment and just follow that. Like there's no big exploratory thing where it's like, maybe it's over there because it looks like I can jump over here or whatever. Like it's just like, oh, I found a yellow cable. Yeah, we just have to follow this.
Right.
So it's
I
like,
guess It can be because you've got the key already
Yeah,
to a lot
yeah.
of the locks.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same in Far Cry 5 where all the climbing spots and all the ladders and all the grappling points, they're all blue. So if you're
Oh,
looking for a spot to climb up, just look for the blue thing.
nice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's where it's sort of annoying that we know about this stuff.
yeah, because I guess if you're a player, you're probably gonna pick it up as well, but you might not have it in your conscious
Hmm.
mind, right?
Yeah,
It's more
it's
like
not
a
a rule that
subconscious.
you constantly keep in mind. It's more like, huh, okay, it looks like I can climb up there, but you don't think about the underlying reason.
Yeah, yeah, fair.
Yeah, man. Like sometimes I hate being a game developer. Oh, but yeah, it's mostly like it has its positive sides as well because I like learning about this stuff. I like learning about the underlying compositions, underlying color contrasts, and the way that we use these in our environments, and the way that every world has their own set of rules that they play with.
Yeah.
But then in the case of Tarkov, to come back to that, like it's also super annoying when they break because you kind of
Yes.
expect these rules to be into place, and then yeah, some people just don't care or don't adhere to those rules.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I think you can almost say that it's not that how to put this. So it's not just that you have more things that you find, like you notice more things if you're a game dev. I would almost say that the fun of playing games is it can be almost a different thing than the like the stuff you're having fun with when
Hmm.
you're playing as a gamer, because it's not just that you find this stuff and you're like, oh, I like, okay, it makes it easier for me because I know I just need to follow this yellow cable and I'll be done with the quest. But it then can also add that new experience of, oh, I love how they did this is really cool, so you're maybe having less fun with the actual game, but you're having more fun with just finding all the cool inspiration and thinking about the development process. It's almost like you're playing a different game.
Yeah, man, for sure, totally agree. Like it's sort of like photography. Like you just pick up this camera and you see the world through like a different perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I totally agree. That's a really good point. But yeah, we still get lost in these worlds. It's just in a different way, right?
Yeah, I think maybe the threshold for like full immersion is a bit higher.
Yeah, I would say a lot higher.
Yeah.
Like it takes way longer because it's it's like you said, it's stupid stuff that pulls us out of that immersion. Like, oh, here you have a stupid fuel can again.
Yeah. But then there's games like Metro that I still can't finish because all of the spooky spiders in it. So I mean, sometimes it still gets you.
Oh man, we should do a Halloween live stream or something.
No, no, I'm never touching that game again.
Oh my god. Yeah, you're gonna be fighting spiders over in Metro, and I'm gonna be playing like a deep sea VR game where they let me down into a cage in
Oh,
deep water or something like.
I
"Ugh."
couldn't do that either. I saw Subnautica and it seems like a really really cool game, but it also seems like my nightmare.
Yeah, yeah, I feel the same way,
Oh my
man.
god! And then there's like these whales that go
Yep.
around you.
Fuck
It's
this
just
shit,
so
I'm out.
scary shit. Oh yeah. Oh man.
All right,
Ugh.
man. Should we go to the Patreon question of this week?
Let's do
Let's
it.
do it. So we have a pretty long one from Lloyd. So here we go. Do you think that people need to be a bit more honest upfront with their critique of other people's work? Sometimes I feel that on forums and discords, people sometimes avoid trying to pick out the negatives in case they look too harsh. Uh, they're trying to bring someone down or they're afraid to offend someone. What do you think about this?
All right. So I'll start. I'll show you that I'm not that way, and I'll criticize your question, and I'll tell you that you said sometimes I feel that on forums people sometimes avoid, and that's you doubled up on the sometimes. You didn't need to do that. So this is my honest critique to your question.
Yeah,
Just
thanks, man.
right, just trying to break the mold, you know. So Lloyd, be better next time. Or maybe it was Timothy when he was writing down the
No, no,
points.
I'm blaming Lloyd on this one. Come on.
No, but I think. So yes, so I think especially when there's like a Discord with just other people that are trying to learn, and then maybe there's people that are more like the teachers, let's say, like people that are like from the industry or something like that,
Hmm.
and I think the people from the industry, they will usually give you pretty good feedback because they know, like, they're not there to waste time. They're not trying to like be friends with anyone so that they're not like, oh, I don't want to piss this guy off because then he won't give me feedback or something, because he's not looking for that. So they'll probably
Yeah,
be
that's a good
more
point.
honest. But I think, yeah, maybe there's some people that are just like, I don't want to I don't want to ruin my relationship with anybody on here. I'm just going to be like, oh yeah, it looks great, which in the end isn't helpful at all, obviously.
Hmm.
Or which could also happen, which I have been guilty of that before, is that I have given people feedback because they asked for it, and then they don't do anything about it, and then they ask me again, and I give them more feedback, and then nothing changes, and I get kind of frustrated because I'm like, why are you asking me for stuff, for like feedback on your scene or your prop,
Yeah.
and then I give it to you and you don't do anything about it? That frustrates me, and then maybe the next time they'll ask me, I'll just be like, oh yeah, perfect, because
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to spend time like looking at something, thinking of ways to improve it, to just like to have it go nowhere.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a really good point. I wanna open up about that a little bit too, because I've had the same issue with some people doing the same thing. But
yeah,
then always in the back of my mind, I'm like, if I give feedback, I don't want you to just do it one to one.
no,
I
yeah,
want there to be like some sort of back and forward, and it's not because I'm in the industry, quote unquote, and you need
you're
to listen
right.
to me.
Yeah,
Like it should be like a conversation, but then yeah, on the other side of the spectrum, if you don't do anything about it, then it sort of feels like you're just asking feedback, but it's not really to get feedback. It's just to get eyes on what you're doing and
yeah,
to get some more interest in the piece that you're building, which
yeah.
I expect a lot of people do just to get the likes or the views or whatever.
Maybe, yeah. I never thought about that. I guess that's true.
Yeah,
So yeah,
it's kind of a difficult thing because I get frustrated with that as well. When there's like some people, I usually give them like three chances, and if they don't listen in the first two, I just tell them like, look, this might be the last time I give feedback if you're not gonna listen to it, because I have other people asking questions and feedback, and
mm,
they at least listen to it and take it in and try to work with it instead of just
yeah,
like completely ignoring it, basically.
and yeah, and I just want to stress again, it doesn't mean that you should take everything one to one,
Hmm.
right? When someone gives you feedback, because I think it's important to sometimes be assertive and say, actually, you know what? I think I like this better.
Yeah.
Even though, like, if, let's say you did a poll, you were like, do you like this thumbnail better or this one? And then they say, oh, I like this one better. But you're like, no, actually, I like this one better. Even though you could then at that point say, why even do a poll anyway? Why even ask
Hmm.
if you're just going to do what you want to do? But yeah, sometimes people come up with ideas for, if you ask them for them, that just aren't good, and that's fine. But if you're asking for feedback and I don't see any change, it's just the same thing. Like, it might not be like, oh, you have to change this little thing to that color, it'll look better, but more like a general thing, like your texture is too noisy. And
Hmm.
then they'll ask me again after a month, and then all the textures are still super noisy. Then I'll be like,
Yeah.
Okay, did you not hear what I said? Like, what? That's the thing. It's completely fine if you want to do that, but then don't ask me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I need to take time out of my day, and like, ideally, I really want to put. If I want to give someone feedback, I'm going to put a lot of thought into it
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
give my best answer, because I don't want to tell somebody something that it's not in the best interest, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
it's
that's another point that I want to stress. Like, if you ask feedback, it's giving feedback is a skill on its own. I feel like there's so many factors involved with that that you kind of get to know you kind of have to know the person asking for the feedback in the first place, because
yeah,
some people really deal well with just harsh criticism, and I might be one of them. But then if I do the same thing to other people that are just trying to get in the industry, and maybe they've been working on it for like 4 years and they still feel like a little bit stuck, and then you give them super harsh criticism, they might just completely break down. So
right,
that's not what you want with that kind of feedback. You want to build the person up. You want to give them something that they can work on in a way that you still address like the negative points that you want to say. So you could I would 100% still tell them all the stuff that you want to tell them. You might just have to dress it up in a way where it makes it more appealing or pleasant to listen
yeah.
to.
Do the my dad works in coaching and stuff like that, and he told me about the sandwich technique, which is if you want to
Yep.
give someone negative feedback, first say something good and then end on something good. Be like, okay, I like the general, I don't know, the general mood of your piece. I think your textures are too noisy, and you have to work on the poly count is too low. We can see the edges everywhere, uh, but the lighting is really nice,
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll be leaving with that sense of accomplishment, being like, okay, I already nailed this. I just need to fix this,
Yeah. Yeah.
instead of being like, oh man, your textures are really noisy, your models are really low poly, and I don't like this guy's face.
Mm-hmm.
It's that's not going to be like it might still be productive, and it might work with some people that respond well to that kind of criticism, or that know that you're just trying to help them, and they're just assuming that everything that you're not mentioning is good,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But then there's other people that just assume that everything that you don't mention is bad, or that it's not worth mentioning,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I am one of these people. I when I get like, there's some people at the company that when they give feedback, it's all just the negative parts, which is more concise, and it'll probably like it just means everything that I don't say anything about, it's fine, and you can keep it. It's that, which is nice. You know that you just have to address that stuff, but it can sometimes still get you down, and you can be like,
Yeah. It creates
oh
friction.
man, yeah. But then at the same time, do you want to take the time every time to say, oh yeah, this is good and this is good, you don't have to change this? I think that's probably the reason why maybe on a Discord people might be a little bit nicer as well, because they don't know anybody, probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
There might be some people that have been on the Discord for ages, and they know each other, they know how they respond. But if it's just some guy that's asking for feedback, you don't want to go crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it's harder to give negative feedback than it is to give positive feedback. Usually, it's harder to say, "Oh, well, I would change this, and this," instead of saying, "Oh yeah, it looks good. Keep going." So maybe that's why people don't give as harsh of a feedback, is because they don't want to spend the time on writing down a list
That's
of
interesting
all the
because
good.
I feel like the complete inverse. Like
Really?
I don't have an issue with giving or like pointing out the negatives basically. But I always find myself like limiting the amount, or like condensing that information and like trying to dress it up with something good. Well, it also depends on the piece, of course. But I feel like I'm super critical, even of my own work. Like there's like a ton of stuff that I could point out was like, oh, I want to change this, I want to change that. Like this should be better.
Right.
And Yeah, it might just be like a personal thing too.
Yeah, you might just be a horrible person.
Yeah, I might just be. This is all a ruse.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, I get that as well. I if I see something like that's a friend of mine who's now working at the company I used to work for before. Um, he was still at uni when I was already at that company, and he was asking me for some feedback, and that was like, it was the best experience I ever had with that, because I would give him feedback, and like a week later when we talked again, he would have done what I said, but like not exactly. I wouldn't tell him to like, oh yeah, move this over there. But I would be like, I just don't think that this is not how people this is not how people live,
Hmm.
right? It's They don't have boxes on the floor everywhere, in like only if they're just moving or if they're like trying to find something in a box.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
if they're just living in this space, they're probably going to have that in a corner somewhere. They're not going to have it in the middle of the room. It
Hmm.
might look nicer for the composition, but why would you just have a bunch of boxes in the middle of your room? You're just gonna, you're gonna have to walk around them every time you go in and go out of that room.
Yeah, yeah.
And and it, and the feedback would be addressed, and then there would be like something else added as well, or maybe one of the things that I would say, he didn't do what I had in mind to fix it, but he fixed it some other way, but it still worked, and maybe it was even better. And that was really rewarding, because you saw that he didn't only have um, the ability to understand what my feedback was about, and like uh, do what I said, but also to understand the feedback on a more fundamental level, like not
Yeah.
not just saying, okay, this prop bad, but more like, this is what I would rather do, this is why this is bad, and like responding to the core issue and fixing that, instead of fixing, it's kind of like fixing the the symptoms instead of fixing the actual sickness, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's so that's kind of the
Yeah,
thing.
that's really rewarding to see when you give feedback to people and they truly make the feedback their own. Like they take it
Yes.
in and they turn it into something that they want to do instead of something that you tell them to do.
Yeah.
Which is some of the biggest parts. Like I feel some people get intimidated by feedback as well. Like when you give them feedback, it's like, oh, now I need to do this because then he's gonna be pissed if I don't do it in the next session or whatever. But that's
Right.
but that's that's not true. Um, as long as you can explain why you did it in the way that you did, or yeah, if you can just show it, like you just mentioned that you just really made it your own. That's gonna make a big impact.
I
Uh,
agree. Yeah, that's the best way to handle feedback, I think, is to think about what the other person's saying, and just trying to find out um the root issue that you
mhm.
might be having, and then trying to combat that instead of going for like all the little details or something.
Yeah. There's also one other thing that really ties into this well, and it's you don't want to overload the amount of feedback that you give. Because this is
Yeah.
this is something that I found out for myself is that in the beginning I would just be like, oh, this is you give them the sandwich technique, right? No, this is good, and this can change, but like the proportion of the amount of stuff that would need changing compared to the good stuff was like, I don't know, 70-30 or whatever.
Yeah.
It was just way too much negatives for like the amount of positives. So it was this is what I tend to do when I give feedback. I look at the biggest change that's going to help the scene.
Yeah.
So say in a random case it might be lighting, but I also know that some of the textures might be off. I'm not gonna talk about the texture specifically because I'm just gonna talk about the lighting, and then if they change the lighting, they're probably gonna see themselves that the textures might be off anyway.
Yeah.
So there's no reason for me to directly say like, look, you need to change this, because some of those things that I'm going to be addressing are going to have the knock-on effect of changing the other pieces anyway.
True. And also, I think that's why it's always a good idea to ask when you're asking for feedback, to ask for feedback on a specific thing.
Yeah.
Because it has two good parts. It's not only that if you say, okay, can you give me feedback about the textures in my scene? Then you're not only getting the feedback for that, which is the important bit, because that's what you wanted to know, because that's maybe what you're unsure about. But then if someone points out, like, oh yeah, I know that you asked for feedback on textures, but I just noticed that if you improved your lighting, your textures would be a lot better as well. Then you're probably like, that feedback probably will be even more important, because that person knew you were asking for texturing feedback, and he felt so strongly about that feedback that he still included it.
Mm-hmm.
So it might be worth looking into that as well.
Yeah, that's a
You know
that's a
what I
really
mean?
good
It's like,
point.
it helps you maybe identify the problems in your scene that you didn't even notice before yourself, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
the bigger picture ones that you might not even be thinking of.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like a lot of people, they just throw their stuff on like a Discord and are like, "Oh, comments and critiques, welcome." But it's like,
Yeah.
well, it could be like, especially in some of the bigger Discords where you have like a ton of people just possibly replying to it. You're getting so much input that you might feel that the whole piece is bad. So
Yes,
you
you
can
might
you can
get
kind of
overwhelmed.
shelter yourself from that feeling by just, like you said, just asking for really specific feedback about like, look, I just want to focus on textures. And then if other people say something about, I don't know, like the scale of the prop or whatever, like you could still take that in, but that was not part of the original question if you want to
Yeah.
focus it. Yeah, man. Sounds good. Do you want to add anything to this? I
No,
mean,
I think I've said everything I wanted to say.
yeah. Okay, cool.
Feedback's important. Beeps.
Yeah, definitely. It's both from the person that asked it and the person that gives it. Like
Yes,
it's a skill that you need to improve over time as well, just like anything else. Like it's not
definitely.
uh that you're always going to be good at feedback. Is going to be an incremental changing thing.
Yeah. I think especially when you receive more feedback, it makes you become better at giving it as well.
Mhm.
Just
Yeah.
because you know how your reaction was to some, like if you know you don't respond well to a certain type of feedback that you get, then you can package it a little bit differently when you give someone else similar feedback.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's all about building each other up. Like the the thing that I saw coming up in the Discord was that there was a lot of competition, especially in school environments. But
Yeah.
it shouldn't be like that. Like we're all in this together. Like it's not because this guy is doing awesome work that he's gonna take all the jobs from all the other people.
Yeah.
Like there's jobs enough to go around. So yeah, try to build each other up instead of breaking each other down. It's
Yeah.
uh it's only gonna help you in the long run too.
Yeah, and I mean, if a certain sense of competition helps you with that, maybe that, like, a little bit of it could be healthy.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're like just trying to one up each other and being super petty, and not like being like, oh, I'm not gonna tell you about this technique because I want to, I don't know,
Yeah, this is
get
my
more
technique.
likes. Yeah, like that's just that you're just being petty.
Yeah, it's just silly. Like, but I agree. Like some competition is good. I like having the friendly competitions where you're like, oh, let me show you, but then it's still friendly. Like there's no damage done in the end.
Yeah, it's the same way that some people say they look at ArtStation and they get depressed.
Yeah.
Uh, but for me, it's more like I look at ArtStation and I become depressed for a second, and then I become inspired.
So the depression is still there, but it's just 1 second.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean that would be a good one to talk about because I do feel that a lot of beginners get really intimidated by that.
Yeah,
So
I think that could be a good topic for another episode.
oh yeah, yeah. Talking about the next episode, this is a good time to end this one as well. Like we're coming up to an
Yes,
hour,
sir.
and we really did a good job going into that question. So thanks again for the question, Lloyd.
Thank you.
All right, let's end this part of the episode here. Thanks everyone for listening. Catch you in the next one.
Thank you. Bye bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the podcast. If you did, then you can check out the playlist on the right for more episodes, and don't forget to like, subscribe, or share it with friends. If you're an environment artist trying to break into the industry, or just looking to grow your skills, you can find a ton more resources like weekly tips, blog posts, and more on beyondextend.com. But that's going to do it from our side. Thanks so much for joining us, and a shout out to all of our Patreon supporters who made this possible.